Hello, welcome to Rough Cut Film Review. This is going to be a review of Welcome to the Punch, but before I got started I just wanted to say how sad I was that Roger Ebert had passed away. He was a long-term film reviewer for the Chicago Sun newspaper, and he is one of the few film critics who had worked within the film industry. His reviews were always absolutely fantastic, and he really was my favourite film critic of all time. You always got the sense he was a really tremendous guy as well, and he was really highly regarded by the industry, so very, very sad about that. So anyway, moving on, here's my review of Welcome to the Punch. So this is a British crime caper that's trying to do things properly. It's a genre in which British films have historically struggled, because if we look at how good American films are, you know, things like Heat, Americans just know how to do this kind of stuff really, really well. Part of it's budget, a large part of it is budget, and historically, you know, the British crime capers have tended to look really quite cheap. Having said that, I think there's a lot more to it. I think in a way this genre attracts in the UK the wrong sort of people to it, and I'm thinking of people like Danny Dyer. Not necessarily the most talented people. It's that sort of lad culture, and I don't think it necessarily pays off. If we look at the Sweeney, which I reviewed and loved so much from last year, we can see, and actually, to be honest, I'd like to see that film again, because surely in my mind I'm remembering that the climactic scene is a car chase around a static caravan park. Surely that can't be the case. Surely not. I must have dreamed that. So Welcome to the Punch is made by a young British director called Ewan Creevy, and I've almost certainly pronounced that wrong because I seem to pronounce everything wrong. Put a microphone in front of me and apparently I can't pronounce stuff. He made a little film a few years back called Shifty. Not a great many people saw it, but the ones that did thought it was really, really good. It was a low budget, but it had plenty of heart to it. So here in Welcome to the Punch, we've got a wonderful cast, and really some of my absolute favourite actors. We've got Peter Mullen, who really is one of my favourite actors. Mark Strong, I really like Mark Strong. Angela Riseborough, fantastic. And then add to them the perfectly fine, we've got David Morrissey, James McAvoy, Jason Fleming. So it is a really talented and a very likeable cast. There we go. So, plot-wise, and if I can pronounce all the words, it's actually slightly confusing, actually. Mark Strong is a sort of a master criminal type. It's one of those roles where he scowls a lot. In the prologue, at the beginning, we see him shoot James McAvoy, who's a cliched, straight-as-a-dime copper, character. Mark Strong escapes to his hideout, which is on Iceland or something. He just sort of lays low. Skip forward a few years, and he is forced to return after his son is involved in a robbery that goes wrong, essentially. So we've got Mark Strong, the master criminal, returning and, coming from under his stone, so to speak. And it's a chance for James McAvoy to run him down. So it's a pretty simple tale, really, of cops, criminals, and politically minded people in high places. But while it is quite a simple story, when I was watching it, I really didn't feel like it was. It did feel slightly confused to me, in all fairness. So what's to be said about the film? Well, firstly, despite its wonderful cast, I did find it really dull and quite boring, in all fairness. The characters themselves are not very well developed. They are very much archetypes, very two-dimensional, not a lot to do. We do get a couple of nice scenes, but largely, to be honest, we don't get much in the way of interest. I didn't really feel like these were real people. We had James McAvoy and Angela Riseborough talking a bit like this for a lot of the time, and we're coppers and crikey, governor, and all that sort of thing. And I just sort of thought, really, all right, well, I mean, it's very much by the numbers. It really feels like, it's got a bit of this, a bit of that thrown into it. There's a couple of plot twists which we can really see coming because the characters are so two-dimensional, and the film really leaves little in the way of an impression. It does look good if you like that kind of thing. It's got that kind of modern feel to it. It's got cool colours and tones, sort of lots of light blues and pale colours. And it is directed with panache in terms of, it looks like it's got a higher budget than it really does, but I never really got any kind of sense of emotional engagement with the film. It really did feel almost like I was watching this film in a laboratory or something. It just felt, the whole thing, I mean, the tone of the film had a real lab feel to it as well, and it was trying to portray London as this, which, lots of it is. modern city of glass and steel and everything's in order and new and all this kind of thing, which is fine. And it did a couple of really nice shots, and there's some shots from helicopters, etc., etc. London does look pretty fantastic. It is trying to be a Heat or another, one of those real premium American cops and robbers films, and it's a better attempt than some to do this. But the visual style, the tone are all fine, but there's no real heart to the film, which is typical of many British movies. So I almost feel like, in attempting to copy the Americans, they've sort of missed out on the cliched, British heart in the film, the Four Weddings thing or the Full Monty thing, of having lots of... It's not an objectionable film. It's better than the Sweeney was last year, but at the same time, actually, I was less upset by this because I was just disappointed. I was really looking forward to this, actually. I'd heard interviews by Mark Strong and David Morrissey, and I thought, actually, that sounds pretty good. Unfortunately, I found it dull, very, very dull, and there's just not a lot to recommend this, in all honesty. So there we go. That'll do as my review. It's bland. Not terrible, but bland. And when you're doing these reviews, that's worse. Kind regards, Christopher Thomas.